Master your thoughts, Stoic mindset. Welcome. If you found this video, it wasn't by accident. Something inside you is searching for clarity, for calm, for control. Something in you is tired of being dragged around by worry, by anger, by fear, by the opinions of other people. You feel it, don't you? That restlessness. That noise in your head that never seems to stop. Today, we silence it. Today, we talk about something the ancient Stoics understood more than 2,000 years ago, something most people in the modern world have completely forgotten. We are going to talk about how to master your thoughts, because your thoughts are not just ideas floating in your head. They are the architecture of your entire life. Every decision you make, every emotion you feel, every relationship you build or destroy, all of it begins in the mind. Control the mind, and you control your life. That is the Stoic way. So settle in. Get comfortable. Because what you are about to hear could genuinely change the way you see yourself, the way you see the world, and the way you respond to everything that happens to you from this moment forward. And before we dive in, if this kind of content speaks to you, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that subscribe button and the bell notification. Every single week, we go deep into Stoic philosophy, ancient wisdom, and practical mindset tools that you can use in real life. This community is growing fast, and you do not want to miss what's coming. Now, let's begin. Part 1. The battlefield is your mind. Marcus Aurelius was one of the most powerful men who ever lived. As Emperor of Rome, he commanded armies, governed millions of people, and held the fate of an empire in his hands. And yet, every single morning, he sat down and wrote to himself. Not to history. Not to the public. To himself. He reminded himself, day after day, of the same truths. He wrote about controlling his reactions. About not being ruled by anger. About the shortness of life and the importance of living with virtue. Why would the most powerful man in the world need to constantly remind himself of these things? Because Marcus Aurelius understood something that most people never accept. Power over the external world means nothing if you have no power over your internal world. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Read that again. Power over your mind, not outside events. This is the foundation of Stoic philosophy. And it is the foundation of everything we are going to cover today. Most people spend their entire lives trying to control what happens to them. They want the right job, the right partner, the right circumstances. They want the world to cooperate with their plans. And when it doesn't, when life throws chaos at them, when people disappoint them, when things fall apart, they feel helpless, anxious, angry, depressed. Because they built their peace on something they cannot control. The Stoics built their peace on something different. They built it on the only thing a human being ever truly owns. The mind. Part 2. The dichotomy of control. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus was born a slave. He had no freedom, no rights, no possessions. He was the legal property of another man. And yet Epictetus became one of the greatest philosophers in history. His teachings have survived over 2,000 years. Kings and emperors studied his words. How did a slave become one of the wisest men who ever lived? He discovered what he called the dichotomy of control. He wrote, "Some things are in our control and others are not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and in one word, whatever are our own actions. Things not in our control are body, reputation, command, and in one word, whatever are not our own actions." This is the teaching. This is the key. There are two categories in life. What you control. And what you do not control. What do you control? Your thoughts. Your intentions. Your responses. Your choices. Your character. What do you not control? The weather. The economy. Other people's opinions. Your past. Traffic. Your body's health. Whether your business succeeds. Whether someone loves you back. Most human suffering, most anxiety, most anger, most disappointment, comes from one mistake. spending your energy on things outside your control. You cannot control whether your boss respects you, but you can control whether you show up with excellence. You cannot control whether someone betrays you, but you can control how you respond to that betrayal. You cannot control loss, but you can control the meaning you give it. This sounds simple. And it is. But simple is not the same as easy. Because your brain is not wired for this by default. Your brain is wired to react, to panic, to chase approval, to avoid discomfort at all costs. Mastering your thoughts means overriding those default settings. It means choosing, deliberately and consciously, where you place your attention and your energy. Every single day. Part 3. The stories you tell yourself. Here is something most people never realize. You do not experience the world directly. You experience the story you tell yourself about the world. Think about that for a moment. Two people can go through the exact same event and walk away with completely different experiences. One sees a tragedy. The other sees a lesson. One feels like a victim. The other feels like a student. Same event. Different stories. Epictetus said, "Men are disturbed not by the things which happen, but by the opinions about the things." Your suffering is not coming from what happened to you. It is coming from what you believe about what happened to you. Someone criticized your work. That is the event. Now watch what the mind does with it. One person hears the criticism and thinks, "They're right. I'm not good enough. I never will be. I should give up." Another person hears the same criticism and thinks, "That's feedback. I can use this. What specifically can I improve?" Both people received the same information, but they created completely different experiences and completely different futures based on the story they told themselves about it. The Stoics called this the practice of impressions, the automatic mental images and interpretations that your mind generates in response to events. And they taught that wisdom begins with pausing before you accept an impression as truth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Receive without pride, relinquish without struggle." In other words, when something enters your mind, don't immediately grab it. Don't immediately fight it. Observe it first. Examine it. Ask, is this true? Is this useful? Is this serving me or harming me? This pause, this small space between stimulus and response, is where your freedom lives. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps, said something very similar. He wrote that between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. That space. That pause. That is what Stoic practice builds. Part 4. The Four Cardinal Virtues. The Stoics did not just teach philosophy as an intellectual exercise. They taught it as a way of living. And at the center of Stoic living were four virtues, four qualities of character that they believed were the foundation of a good life. Wisdom, justice, courage, temperance. Let's look at each one. Wisdom is the ability to see clearly, to understand what is real, what is true, and what actually matters. Wisdom is knowing the difference between what is in your control and what isn't. It is the capacity to think before you react, to examine your beliefs, to update your understanding when you encounter new evidence. Most people confuse information with wisdom. They consume content endlessly, books, videos, podcasts, but never slow down enough to actually integrate what they've learned. Real wisdom requires reflection, silence, the willingness to sit with hard questions. Justice is how you treat other people. The Stoics believe that human beings are inherently social, that we are meant to live in community with each other and to contribute to each other's well-being. Justice means acting with fairness, honesty, and care toward others, not because you will be rewarded for it, but because it is the right thing to do. Marcus Aurelius wrote constantly about his duty to the people he served. He never saw power as something to take. He saw it as something to give. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act rightly despite fear. The Stoics were not passive. They were not people who simply accepted whatever happened and did nothing. They acted. They engaged. They spoke hard truths even when it was uncomfortable. Courage, in the Stoic sense, means being willing to face the truth, especially the truths about yourself. It takes courage to admit when you are wrong. It takes courage to change. It takes courage to hold your values when the crowd is moving in a different direction. Temperance is self-mastery. It is the ability to regulate your desires, your emotions, and your behavior. The Stoics understood that undisciplined desire is the enemy of peace. When you always need more pleasure, more approval, more comfort, you are never truly free. You are always chasing something. Temperance is choosing what you actually need over what you momentarily want. It is the capacity to say no to yourself, and in doing so, to say yes to something greater. These four virtues are not abstract ideals. They are daily practices. Every morning you have the opportunity to be a little wiser, a little more just, a little more courageous, a little more self-controlled than you were the day before. That is the Stoic path. Part 5: Negative Visualization, the practice of gratitude through loss. Here is a practice the Stoics used that might sound strange at first, but that modern psychology has confirmed as one of the most powerful tools for happiness and resilience. It is called negative visualization, or in Latin, premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. The practice is this: imagine losing what you love. Imagine your health failing. Imagine losing your home. Imagine the people you care about most being taken from you. Why would anyone do this? Not to become pessimistic. Not to live in fear. But to wake up to the extraordinary value of what you already have. Most of us suffer from a condition called hedonic adaptation. We get what we want, and very quickly it stops feeling special. The job becomes ordinary. The relationship becomes routine. The body we once wished for becomes something we take for granted. Negative visualization is the antidote. When you truly contemplate the loss of something, you stop taking it for granted. You see it fresh. You become grateful, not because things are perfect, but because you have suddenly remembered what it would mean to lose them. Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we had come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day." Balance life's books each day. Ask yourself tonight, if this were the last day I had with the people I love, how would I treat them? If this were the last time I could do the work I do, how would I approach it? This is not morbid. This is clarity. Death, the Stoics knew, is not the enemy of life. Unconsciousness is. Living on autopilot is. Moving through your days so distracted, so caught in habit and noise, that you never actually show up for your own life. Negative visualization wakes you up. Use it. Not as a source of anxiety, but as a source of presence. Part 6: The obstacle is the way. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This idea, which author Ryan Holiday later made famous in his book of the same name, is one of the most practically powerful ideas in all of Stoic philosophy. Every obstacle is an opportunity. Not metaphorically. Literally. When you are blocked from the path you wanted to take, the obstacle itself shows you a new path. When you cannot move in one direction, you are forced to develop new skills, new strategies, new capacities. The person who never faces hardship never develops resilience. The person who never faces failure never develops wisdom. The person who never faces opposition never discovers what they are truly made of. Think about the most difficult period of your life. Now think about who it made you. The strength you have today, the wisdom, the patience, the empathy, how much of it came from ease? How much came from comfort? And how much came from being pushed to your absolute limit and deciding to get back up? The Stoics did not pray for easy lives. They prayed for strength to face hard ones. And they taught that the way to build that strength is not to avoid difficulty, but to engage it. To lean into it. To ask, what is this obstacle teaching me? How can I use this? How does this make me better? This is not toxic positivity. This is not pretending that hard things don't hurt. Hard things hurt. Loss hurts. Failure hurts. Betrayal hurts. The Stoic approach is to feel it, and then ask, what do I do with this? Every time life brings you an obstacle, you have a choice. You can let it stop you, or you can let it shape you. The Stoics chose to be shaped. Part 7, Amor Fati. Love what is. Friedrich Nietzsche, who was deeply influenced by Stoic philosophy, coined a phrase that Marcus Aurelius lived long before it had a name. Amor fati. Love of fate. Not acceptance of fate. Not tolerance of fate. Love. This is perhaps the most radical idea in this entire video. It means this: whatever happens to you, whatever life brings, whatever you cannot change, embrace it. Not just tolerate it. Not just survive it. Love it. Why? Because it is real. Because it is happening. Because resistance to what is does not change what is, it only adds suffering to what is already difficult. When you fight reality, when you spend your energy wishing things were different, resenting what happened, refusing to accept what cannot be changed, you split your energy. Half of you is here in the present, and half of you is trapped in an argument with the past or a future that may never come. Amor fati is the practice of bringing all of yourself into the present moment. Accepting this moment not as a compromise, but as the only thing that is actually real, and therefore, the only thing worth engaging with fully. Marcus Aurelius lost children. He faced plagues, wars, and betrayals. He dealt with enormous suffering throughout his reign. And in his private journals he kept returning to this same practice. Accept what is. Work with what you have. Love the life you are actually living, not the one you wish you had. This is not weakness. This is the deepest kind of strength. Because a person who can find meaning and peace in any circumstance cannot be broken by circumstance. That is freedom. Real freedom. Part 8, Daily Stoic Practices. Philosophy without practice is just entertainment. The Stoics were not interested in interesting ideas. They were interested in transformation. And transformation requires practice. Daily, consistent, intentional practice. Here are the practices that the Stoics actually used. The morning meditation. Every morning, before the day begins, take a few minutes to sit quietly. Marcus Aurelius did this. He would prepare his mind for what the day might bring. He would remind himself, today, I will encounter difficult people. Today, I will face frustrations. Today, things may not go as I plan. And he would prepare his responses in advance. Not by predicting specifics, but by grounding himself in his values. By reminding himself what mattered. By choosing, before the day began, who he intended to be. You can do this too. 5 minutes. Before you pick up your phone. Before you check your messages. Just sit. Breathe. Ask yourself, what do I value? How do I want to show up today? What is in my control? The evening review. Seneca practiced this every night before sleep. He would review his day with honest eyes. Not to punish himself. Not to celebrate himself. To learn. He would ask, where did I act in alignment with my values today? Where did I fall short? What can I do differently tomorrow? This is the practice of self-examination. Without judgment, but with honesty. Most people are afraid to look at themselves clearly. They avoid it. They numb it. They stay busy so they don't have to sit with the uncomfortable awareness of who they are, and who they are not yet becoming. The Stoics sat with it. And they grew because of it. The journaling practice. Write. Every day write. Not for anyone else. For yourself. Write about what you are struggling with. Write about what you are grateful for. Write about your fears and your values and your intentions. Write about the gap between who you are and who you want to be. Marcus Aurelius's private journals became one of the most profound philosophical texts in history, and he never intended anyone to read them. He wrote because the act of writing forced him to think clearly, to examine honestly, to articulate what he actually believed. You do not need to be a Roman emperor for this to work. You just need a pen and the willingness to be honest with yourself. The view from above. When you are caught in a moment of stress, anger, or anxiety, try this. In your mind, zoom out. Imagine you are looking at yourself from above. From your city. From your country. From the planet. From space. See how small the moment is. See how brief your life is in the context of history. See how the thing that feels enormous right now will, in 1 year, or 1 century, be invisible. This is not to minimize your experience. It is to give it perspective. The Stoics used this practice to release attachment to outcomes that didn't truly matter. To stop treating inconveniences as catastrophes. To remember what was actually important. Voluntary discomfort. Once a week, or once a month, if that feels like too much, choose to be uncomfortable. Fast for a day. Take a cold shower. Sleep on the floor. Go without something you normally rely on. Not because suffering is virtuous, but because comfort is a trap. When your life is too comfortable, you begin to confuse wants with needs. You begin to believe that you cannot survive without things that your ancestors would have considered luxuries beyond imagination. Voluntary discomfort reminds you of your strength. It reminds you that you can handle more than you think. It strips away the anxiety that comes from always needing things to be easy. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the man who hankers after more." Practice contentment. Practice simplicity. Practice needing less. You will be surprised how rich that makes you feel. Part 9. Relationships and the Stoic Mind. The Stoics are often misunderstood as cold, emotionless, detached. This is completely wrong. The Stoics care deeply about relationships. They believed that human connection was one of the greatest goods available to us. They just approached relationships differently from the way most modern people do. The Stoic approach to relationships starts with this: do not place your happiness in the hands of another person. This sounds harsh, but it is actually an act of love. When you make your emotional well-being dependent on what someone else does, how they treat you, whether they approve of you, whether they stay, you place an impossible burden on them. And you create a fragile kind of love that can shatter the moment the other person shows their humanity. The Stoic approach is to love fully, but to love from a place of wholeness, not need. To love because loving is the right thing to do, not because you need something in return. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." In relationships, this means be honest. Be fair. Show up with integrity. Do not manipulate. Do not perform. Do not love strategically. Just love. Clearly. Honestly. Without conditions. And when people disappoint you, because they will, because all of us are flawed and imperfect, return to the dichotomy of control. Their behavior is outside your control. Your response is not. You can choose to understand them. You can choose to set a boundary. You can choose to forgive, not for their sake, but for yours. Because unforgiveness is a prison you build inside yourself and then live in. The Stoic mind in relationships is not cold. It is clear. It is stable. It is capable of deep love, precisely because it is not desperate for it. Part 10. The present moment is all you have. We have covered a great deal today. But I want to end with the most fundamental truth in all of Stoic philosophy. The truth that everything else we have discussed points back to. The present moment is all you have. Not the past. The past is memory. It exists only in your mind. Not the future. The future is imagination. It exists only in your mind. The only thing that is real, the only thing you can actually touch, actually live, actually change, is right now. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." 2 words. Confine yourself to the present. Not the past that already happened and cannot be changed. Not the future that hasn't come yet and may never come the way you fear. Right here. Right now. This moment. This breath. This choice. Most human suffering lives in time travel. Regret pulls you into the past. Anxiety pulls you into the future. And while your mind is in those places, your life, your actual life, the only one you have, is happening without you. The Stoic practice is to return, again and again, to the present. Not because the past doesn't matter or the future doesn't require planning, but because planning for the future happens now. Learning from the past happens now. Everything happens now. When you are truly present, you are free. Free from regret. Free from anxiety. Free from the exhausting effort of managing an imagined past and an imagined future simultaneously. Just here. Just this. That is the Stoic mind. You have just spent time with ideas that have survived over 2,000 years. They survived because they work. Not as theories. Not as comfort. As tools for living. Marcus Aurelius used them to govern an empire. Epictetus used them to find freedom in slavery. Seneca used them to face death with dignity. And you can use them to master your thoughts, to build your character, to live with clarity and purpose in a world that is constantly trying to distract you, manipulate you, and pull you away from yourself. This is the work. It is not easy, but it is worth everything. Start tomorrow morning. 5 minutes of quiet. A journal entry. One honest question: who do I want to be today? And then live your answer. If this video reached something in you, if something here felt true, I need you to do one thing right now. Subscribe to this channel. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because every week we go deeper into Stoic wisdom, ancient philosophy, and practical tools for building a stronger, clearer, more intentional life. This community is built for people who are serious about growth. People who are done drifting. People who are ready to take ownership of their minds and their lives. That is what we do here. Every single week. Subscribe. Be part of this. And I will see you in the next one. The work continues.